This guy is drinking a beer at Rosie O'Grady's in Midtown. Now, there's nothing wrong about having a beer on a Friday afternoon. A lot of people do it, but chances are most people do not take an official car to the saloon. And chances are most people don't park their cars illegally in a taxi stand for about an hour while they hang out with friends. After O'Grady's, this guy gets into his official car parked in a taxi stand and drives off. Here you see the official license plate. The official's name is Joseph Smith, and he's a vice president in charge of buses for the MTA New York City Transit. Last year, records show he raked in more than $250,000. Not a bad chunk of change.
Now, we're told Smith gets a car because he absolutely needs one to do his job, and that's a little confusing because recently another transit boss, a higher-ranking boss, just bragged that he never owned a car, turned down a car when he was the head of buses, and only takes mass transportation.
The MTA's new chief operating officer named Charlie Monheim told the Daily News, "I look at the service from the viewpoint of somebody who is dependent on mass transit, not somebody who just views it as the way I make my living." But Smith is allowed to commute all by himself in his MTA-provided car the public pays for, to and from his home in Nescaucet, Long Island. That's a 100-mile round trip. Most Long Island commuters are urged to take the Long Island Railroad to the city, and the station in Ronkonkoma is near Smith's house. In the city, Smith parks his car in an MTA-owned lot across from the subway line that connects to the LIRR.
Now, most of you watching probably don't have the luxury of a take-home car or a company car, but chances are, even if you do, you don't get the little services we saw Smith get.
This guy with the gray hair gets paid more than $42,000 a year. His title is Motor Vehicle Operator. He tends to transit car matters. On this day, we saw him hanging out for about an hour with another official transit car you pay for. Then here, Smith gets out of his official car, and the guy with the gray hair gets behind the wheel to give Smith a ride. He drives Smith just a couple of blocks to the New York City Transit headquarters. Then he brings the car back and parks it in Smith's special spot. The whole thing is kind of odd since the walk from the garage to Smith's office takes under 5 minutes.
On another day, we saw the same guy take Smith's $33,000 hybrid, a gas-efficient car, on a very inefficient trip to fill it up with gas.
Although as a rule, transit employees gas up their own cars, this morning the guy with the gray hair gets out of his official car, walks over to Smith's car, and he goes from Lower Manhattan to Brooklyn. He gets out of the car at a gas station in Brooklyn that has a contract with the MTA. Here he's gassing the car up. Then he drives back in rush hour traffic. The entire trip to get gas for the fuel-efficient car took an hour.
Most New Yorkers who are told to use mass transit don't do it all the time because it can be a pain in the neck to get around town, especially on the bus. So when we confronted the head of buses about his car, you kind of got the same vibe from him.
We cover 900 square miles. So would you want me to go from place to place in a bus? Is that what you're looking for me to do? Would it make sense for me to go from Rockville Center, and when I got to come here for a meeting to sit on mass transit and go from here and go from there? Would you want me to waste all that time and do all those things when I could be much more efficient by using the car if I have to? Or if I have to use a mass transit, of course I do. I use it every day.
I get MTA tells us to use it. To commute.
And I do use it.
Not to commute, though.
Well, I do. Sometimes I use it to commute, and sometimes I don't.
Then we asked him about the guy who filled up his car with gas and chauffeured him a few blocks one day.
He came out of this car here, okay? Came out of this car here, took your car for an hour to fill it up with gas. So that kind of...
I don't know who did that. I don't know if it was my car or somebody else's car.
It was your car.
Well, I don't know, John. But
who is this guy? Because he gave you a ride to work one day. I know.
I don't know who this guy is.
Yeah, but you got in the car with him one day, this guy. The guy with the clipboard.
I don't know
who he is.
I don't know who you're talking about, honestly.
Later, the MTA told us Smith was given a ride by the motor vehicle operator on this day because Smith's sciatica was acting up. And what about the trip to Rosie O'Grady's?
You parked this car in a taxi zone outside and went to Rosie O'Grady's for
a beer.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We got it. We got it.
Well, then you got it. Then you should play it then.
But Smith eventually did remember the trip.
Well, the Rosie O'Grady thing was there was people that retired, and I walked in there for a retirement party to see some people and left.
As far as parking the car in a taxi stand goes, the MTA does not allow their cars to park illegally unless there's an emergency. As for drinking, the MTA does not allow drinking on duty, but says Smith was off duty here.
I've been there 33 years, and we've saved millions of dollars, and we've done more than we ever had. But you don't pick that up. All you look to do is pick on little things that are really, it's not really important.
The MTA thinks it's important that you know that Smith has many more responsibilities, especially in the field, than the other boss who bragged about not having a car, and that Smith, through his management, has saved the MTA more than $80 million. And that he also pays the required taxes for the benefit of having a take-home car. I'm John Dutzman, Fox 5 News.